I remember when I had my overdraft. Listen, I lived on that overdraft like it was my lifeline.
Hi guys, welcome back to another finance discussion. My name is Lindy and this is Tando, and together we are the duo that makes skilled finances. For those of you that are joining us for the first time, we're so glad to have you here with us. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell. That way, whenever there's new talks or new discussions, you're notified and you can just watch them. And make sure you're following us on our socials. That's at Skilled Finances.
Today we're having a very interesting discussion. And it's really to address the question, is living debt-free realistic?
Right.
Is it something that's really realistic for you to attain and achieve and pretty much go through life without ever really relying on debt at any point? There's a lot to unpack in this one, so we really wanted to dive deep into it. Now, before we dive deep into, whether the living debt-free side of things is actually realistic, I think it's important to mention that, when you are in debt, which is where we were before, and to some degree we still are, depending on what you use to measure the word debt, is that it's hard to really imagine a life where you don't
Yeah.
live without debt. Because I remember when I had my overdraft. Listen, I lived on that overdraft like it was my lifeline. Like it genuinely was, because without it I would have no money left. Even if I tried to pay it off, well, life happens, life needs money,
Yeah.
bills needs to be paid, etc. So I'd be right back in the overdraft. And then at that point, when you're right in the middle of it, it is hard to really imagine
A life without it.
a life without
Yeah.
debt. You really start to think to yourself, is it really realistic for me to never ever use this overdraft to begin with and then never rely on it ever again and live a life without this overdraft or the credit card? So before we jump into the details, let's really define what we mean by debt in this situation, because people have different opinions
Yeah.
about debt, right? People think this is debt, this is not debt, etc. So what would you say, when it comes to this particular discussion, is living debt free realistic? What kind of debt are people really talking about here?
So I'll probably say maybe consumer debt.
Mm,
So people probably be talking about things like credit cards, loans, or bills that you've not paid and now you're in debt because you have to pay them and stuff
right.
like that. I know, like when you think of other debts, there is discussion about how a mortgage is a debt, which technically it is. You may own the house, but think of it this way:
Mm,
the day you miss a payment or miss consecutive payments, your lender can repossess the house. So
right.
technically it is a debt. So there's a lot of discussion around that topic, and that's for another day. But then you also then think of cars on finance, right? So a lot of people then do feel like a car on finance is you taking a car out on debt. And I understand where they're coming from with that. But then the person who's probably got it is then thinking, no, but I've got the money to pay for this car, so
Right.
I'm technically okay.
Right.
So it's one of those. It depends on how you view it.
Yes. No, you're right about that. And for me, I would say those things as well. I'd
Yeah.
say pretty much consumer debts, but without counting the mortgage. So credit cards,
Loans.
loans, buy now, pay later, anything that you buy on finance, like a car or furniture or anything like that you pretty much buy now and pay in installments. And store cards or anything of that nature, which is usually consumer debt, meaning it's debt that you've used to basically buy things or to
Yeah.
pay for things in the present day, and you get charged interest on them, etc. So I personally have then a very good question to begin with. Do you think that we're too comfortable with debt?
If we're being honest, I think we live in a society that tells you that it's okay
Mm,
to have debt. If we're being completely honest, because we're from Zimbabwe, like originally, I know for a fact, like growing up, my grandparents owned their houses outright. They owned their cars outright. Like they never used debt like that. And in this country that we live in, the UK, it's sort of like a normal thing. It is the norm.
yeah, we live in a society that is built on debt, and it's
Yeah.
it's not just an acceptable thing, it's probably the way things are in many cases. But I would say we are comfortable as well, in the sense of, like, as you say, like pretty much every other person you speak to probably drives a car on finance.
Yeah.
Every other person you speak to probably has bought something that they are paying monthly for right now. And everyone you speak to is probably saying, yeah, I've got 3 credit cards and I've got an overdraft to this bank and
Yeah.
that bank and that bank over here. And it becomes a normal thing, like something that's, you know, not viewed as debt
Yeah.
almost. Like some people, I even myself, I was in a position where my overdraft, I didn't really see it as I owe this money to the bank.
Yeah.
I just saw it as my overdraft.
Like it's the norm.
It's a personalized
Yeah.
thing, and it's part of the way my account is set up. But I then don't think to myself like, okay, this is something that I need to pay off. And I
Yeah.
think that's where the comfort comes in. It's almost like, yeah, we get so used to the credit card, the overdraft, and the thing that we're paying for every month on finance that we don't then psychologically kind of think to ourselves, you know what? This credit card balance that I'm carrying over every month is money that I need to actually repay.
Pay back.
And this overdraft that I'm using is actually something that I need to pay back.
Yeah.
And it's debt. And if I think of it as debt, then it's something that I may want to come out of.
Yeah.
But if I think of it as that's my overdraft, that's my card that gets me by on the last week before I get paid, then I don't really think of it as something that I'm owing money to something or to somebody.
Yeah.
I just kind of see it as an alternative to cover me when I don't have money.
Yeah. And I think it takes a certain mindset shift, right? To then realize that actually I need to come out of this credit card debt. So to use the credit card example, you need a mindset shift because it's very easy to say, well, I don't have enough money. And you know that credit cards sometimes are a saving grace if we're being honest, because
definitely.
there are times when you are in a bind and you actually need to get something or buy something and they are a saving grace. However, the problem then comes in when you then sit and are so comfortable with that credit card debt, like it's the norm.
Yeah.
But like I was saying, it's not an easy thing to come out of because I think you look at it as, oh, I've got the money. You become comfortable in it, but it takes that mindset shift to then be like, actually I can live without having to live with this credit card debt. I think it's sort of like seeing the light and being like, actually there is life outside of the credit card debt. There is
Right.
life outside of having this debt and being so comfortable with it. But it's not an easy thing to get to the point where you realize that actually I can live without it. It takes a lot and it takes a mindset shift.
Yeah, and to be fair, I think that probably answers the biggest part of this question, which is, yes, it is realistic if you think it is.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be realistic if you don't think it is,
Yeah.
because you are what you think, right? Like your thoughts lead to your actions.
Absolutely.
And the way you manage your money, the way you do things with your finances is all led back to how you think and how you feel. So if you really do think that you cannot live without your overdraft or your credit card, then psychologically you're kind of becoming comfortable with the debt, but you're also not, I guess, thinking of solutions or different ways to look at life and to look at your
Yeah.
finances. But if you then start to think to yourself, you know what, I wonder if I can live without my overdraft for the next 2 weeks or for this month alone. Let me just not touch my overdraft once.
Yeah.
Or let me aim to not touch my credit card once at all. And you may find that, yes, it could be a challenge, but those are the first steps that you may start to actually realize that, yes, it is possible for me to live without this debt. It is possible for me to actually not use my overdraft or my credit card at all. So the mindset shift you mentioned is probably the biggest part of this to make it more realistic for you.
Yeah, and I think it's also about becoming uncomfortable with debt, because it's very easy when you're comfortable with something. You sometimes think there's no need to change that because I'm comfortable with it. This applies with anything, even jobs. Like a lot of people are comfortable in their jobs, so it's like, why do I need to change it? I'm comfortable. It's fine. It's working for me. And I feel like it's the same with debt, because if you're feeling like, why do I need to pay off? I'm fine. I'm comfortable with it. This situation works very well for me. But the minute you become uncomfortable, it's like something in you causes you to move and make that shift. But until you become uncomfortable, you always be very comfortable with it.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to pack in that. So for somebody who is in that situation right now, credit card debts, overdrafts, loans, car finance, XYZ. I mean, where do you begin to take this step to really start to realize that actually it is very realistic to live without debt?
Yeah, so seeing other people around us as well, just seeing that actually there is life outside of debt. You can live a life where you don't have debt. And that's where it started for us. So it was then now looking at, okay, so now that we know that it's possible, what do we then need to do to get out of it? And for us, it was basically looking at the different methods to get out of debt. So you have the avalanche method and you have the snowball method. But it was then choosing something that worked for us, and also listening to other influencers online that talk about finances and other books. And books were really important because I feel like a book is good because it touches the mindset in a way, because you then start thinking, oh my God, like I like what they said. I can apply this. I can do this to find myself out of the situation. And those two methods were what worked for us.
Yeah, and I think sometimes you get so bogged down on like which method is better.
Yeah.
Listen, being debt free is the best thing to do. Whether you do it through avalanche or whether you do it through snowball or whether you do it through whatever other strategy there is, don't really matter. The point is this: you need to be debt free. Pick any strategy and go for it. At the end of the day, that's the thing that really does matter. So this is one of the mindset shifts that I think people should make. You know, it's not, we could spend all day arguing about whether one method is better than another method.
Yeah.
But both methods are leading you to be debt free. That's the whole point of all of this. So whichever one you choose, you're still taking that step towards becoming debt free. But I'll probably say, yeah, definitely clearing your debts helps, or taking the steps to clear debt helps to really get to a situation where you start to say that, yes, you know, I can pay off this debt. But let's not lie. It takes, there's a lot that's expected of you to be debt free. You may feel or even think like, okay, yes, I'm ready. I'm going to live a debt free life. But there's a lot of things that need to change, particularly with your financial habits. And I think one of the best things you could do is to learn to live on less than you make.
Absolutely.
Right? Learn to live on less than you make. Therefore, the extra money that you have, you use that towards becoming debt free. If you get paid, let's just say £2,000 a month, and you learn to live on 1,500, that extra 500 can go towards your debts.
I feel like that's what happened a lot during lockdown, like when
actually,
COVID hit. There are a lot of people, like if you go online right now or go on Instagram, for example, and look at accounts of people that have repaid their debt, there are many, many people that paid amazing amounts because they were now at home, right? And they're not having to travel to work. A lot of people are taking that extra money and using it towards their debt. So it just shows how much of a difference that can make. Some people managed to clear debt that they had for years, in 2 years or in 1 year. But it took them saying, okay, now I'm at home. I've got this extra money. What am I going to do with it? Yes, it would have been easier to then be like, oh, I can use it. I can allocate it to like maybe spending and buying stuff because I'm at home. But some of these people then decided that no, I'm uncomfortable with the situation that I'm in. So let me take that extra money and help myself out of the situation that I'm in. So that's another thing to think about.
Yeah, powerful stories for sure. The other thing I would add on is that what people also do, and what we have done and would advise you or encourage you to do, is to build a financial cushion.
Right.
Because fundamentally, one of the reasons, it's not the only reason, but one of the reasons why you find yourselves in debt is because something comes up. An emergency happens, something unexpected happens, and you need money for it. So what do? You use your overdraft, you use your credit card, you borrow money from somebody else because you're in a bind, you need a little bit of money, and these are some ways that you can have access to that money. But actually what you can then do is start to build your own bank of money, your own source of money for those times. And we really call that an emergency fund or sinking funds or whatever other names that come out. But I think all of these things, all of these kind of savings accounts and insurances, in fact, are all pointing to that whole point of saying, I want to be in a position where I can avoid debt being the first choice because I have the money saved if something happens.
And I think it's important that if you are going to save an emergency fund, set yourself some rules, right? Because it's very easy to save an emergency fund and then life happens and you start using that money for what you didn't intend to use it for. So when I say set yourself some rules, I mean, when you know, like, okay, I'm going to have an emergency fund, know what that money is for. Because it's very easy to then find yourself in a position where you're like, well, I've just got an impulse spend, for example. I just need a new TV. I just need new this. But it's actually not part of why you have the emergency fund, and then you touch that money. So it's very important for you to set yourself some ground rules with your emergency fund.
Right. So we've touched on, obviously, being we think it is realistic to live debt free, to be fair, because that journey for some people, it takes years until you're actually debt free. It's not going to happen overnight because that's the nature of being in debt, unfortunately. If you have got a lot of debt, it will take you some work, some effort and a while to pay it off. But when you read the stories of people who have gone through that journey and really stuck with it, that then becomes something that really encourages you or opens your eyes to actually realize that this person is or was where I am today.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened with us when we had our credit card debts and our overdrafts to pay off. I mean, now we don't have any debts in that nature. The only debts that we can say we really have is our mortgage.
Yeah.
And we have got a car finance, and that's kind of it as far as debt is concerned. But it took us, witnessing somebody else who didn't have an overdraft, didn't have any credit card debt, for us to realize that, yes, it's actually possible for us as well.
So before we finish, what would you say your one tip is, or what's one thing that you did actually to help you live a debt-free life?
I would say it's honestly, it's just going through the mud of paying off your debt, just going through the rough times and having that long-term mindset to really understand that, okay, yes, I'm in this position today, but I want to come out of it.
Yeah.
And it's not going to take me a month. Let's just be honest, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not going to take me a month, or maybe it's not even going to take me a year. It might take me 2 or 3 years, but it takes real dedication to that long-term view for you to then make it a reality in your life. Because yes, it's going to be tough for some people. For some people, yes, it might take them 6 months, but for you, it might be longer. Who knows? But the point is simply that all of these things that we're talking about may sound like a far-fetched future for you, but it's a future that is possible.
It's very possible.
And the one hack that made it possible for me is simply having that future so ingrained in my focus that I didn't lose mind, I didn't lose hope, I didn't lose focus. I just knew that I will get there one day, and I just need to go through the process of paying off this debt, because I knew what I wanted out of life, and that's a life of not having any consumer debt, any credit card debt, any overdraft debt, and any of those kinds of debts. And so, yeah, just having that long-term perspective for me is one thing that really worked. So we hope that today's discussion is kind of giving you hope to understand that, living debt-free is very possible. We just wanted to encourage you to say, we've done it and so can you. And, it's very possible to be done. So if you have found value in this discussion today, hit the like button to let us know that, yes, you are on your journey to becoming debt-free, or you have become debt-free and you're enjoying the lifestyle. Let us know in the comments, like, where are you on your journey? How are you finding it? What tips would you add or hacks would you say? Is it something you think it is realistic or not? We'd love to know your thoughts. Let us know in the comments below. We really appreciate you joining us today, and we hope we've inspired you. We'll see you soon.